That's actually a piece I wrote for Transatlantic, which is on the Bridge Across Forever album. But I had it, I mean, I've just had this piece of music for years and years. And eventually, you know, Marillion didn't, you know, I used to play it in rehearsals and while we were writing with Marillion, and that didn't seem to catch on, as it were. And I hate forcing ideas on people, because then I think, well, I'm doing it for the wrong reasons, and I'm doing it because, you know, if other people think my ideas are good, then it's great. But if I just try and push ideas because I want to push ideas, then that's kind of wrong, really. I sort of mess about with bits and pieces on bass guitar, on guitar. Like, for example, Faith was something I wrote on guitar. Actually, the second half of Faith I actually wrote on bass. It's kind of chords that I used on the bass, and then it got interpreted into being a band thing. And I sometimes write on piano. But you know, I just kind of help with arranging more than the real writing. I'll be the person, you know, Mark will be playing away, and I'll be the person who says, "That's really good." And Mark will go, "What?" You know, and I'll say, "No, those chords, the way you did this and this," because I can interpret what other people do, sometimes easier than they can remember what they did. And I do the same kind of thing with Steve Rothery as well. You know, he'll just be noodling away, and I'll pick the bits that I think, oh, that's got something, you know, and maybe I'll go away and work on it. Or with The Damage, for example, I took a whole jam of about an hour and cut up my favourite bits, and you know, that's how it works. I really, really like the Marble sections, which actually were all written by Steve Hogarth, really. You know, if we're truthful. They have a real quality to them that is just class, really. And, you know, you can't always put your finger on how that happens, and sometimes you can be searching for how to make that happen with a piece of music, and it just won't. It just has to be right when it's actually being recorded at the time. You know, and you have to be careful with what you do with it. And those pieces for me just sound pretty much perfect. I'm very pleased with Neverland as well. I mean, I'm probably more excited about the stuff I didn't have a hand in writing, actually, because things I have a hand in writing, I tend to think, no, is that really as good as it could have been? You know, I'm still kind of in my mind, they're still not quite finished. But when it's something that you've written, you're always thinking of tinkering with it. And then maybe sometimes when you come back to playing something live after the first. You know, with the first time we play all these songs live, we try and be pretty much accurate to the albums. But afterwards, we'll start to tinker with songs and make them maybe more like we would have made them if we'd had a bit more time with the album, or we'd taken the album on the road before we'd recorded it. You know, because you tend to find once you've started playing songs live, you tend to find where the weak points are, because they just naturally spring to mind, that the audience aren't as excited about this particular section of music that they should be, and you find ways to make it work better. Those chords in Neverland, they're a classic example of chords that Mark would come up with, and he'd just tinker around with about 20 chords, all doing similar things, and you know, it sometimes takes somebody else to say, that's the bit that, you know, those are the ones that work, or whatever, you know. And you know, that's kind of, Mark is great with chords, and you know, we actually spent months working out tiny little changes to songs and chords and things, you know, that almost, you know, at the time almost seem like they're insignificant, but actually it's those tiny little changes that make, you know, every time you hear what you think is the same section of music throughout a song, you know, be it a chorus or a verse or something, they're always changing, you know, they're never quite the same, and that's what keeps something exciting and interesting, and keeps all that depth going, you know. In a way, there's a strange kind of part of the audience that actually want to see you fall. It's a bit like the Christians and the Lions thing. That's really, you know, that's what live performance is really about, and people wouldn't want to see us dance about to backing tapes and have all the moves and everything. They want to see, You know, they want to see the whites of our eyes, and they want to see us being petrified when something's gone slightly wrong and we have to make it work. It's very cool to fuck up, and it's very cool to get things wrong if you overcome them in a good-humoured, gentlemanly kind of way. I mean, if you suddenly, you know, if somebody does something wrong or something goes wrong on stage or a piece of equipment breaks down, and you just see somebody raging and throwing stuff at the poor techs who have done it wrong, then you know, that's a bit shameful display of behaviour, really, and that makes you look a fool, you know. So with things go wrong, you really do have to keep, you know, bite your tongue and keep your sense of humour. And let's face it, you know, everybody knows. It's not like we have to prove that we're good musicians. I think everybody knows kind of the deal with the band, and I think everybody, well, hopefully everybody realises that, you know, this is the start of a tour, and later on in the tour they come to see us, they'll see us such a different show, you know, and it's almost you know, it's the early shows that people will be talking about at the end of the day, because those will be the shows where people go, oh yeah, I saw that show when that happened, and it was, you know, and so H had to do this, or like he had to borrow a torch because he couldn't get, you know. It's those little things like that that really stick in your mind. What we consider to be great shows are where we've played well, probably. I know it doesn't always equate into being having just that X factor going. Sometimes something has to go slightly wrong, and you have to, you know, bring, you know, something else is brought out of you, and that's sometimes what the audience will find that, you know, they relate to. Well, it's just something that, you know, I'm charmed with, really. It's a gift that, you know, it's one of those things that it just happened to me, and even before I picked up an instrument, I kind of understood music, which seems odd. But I used to be able to listen to, and I can still, you know, I can listen to a song, and without even playing it or without even thinking about what it is, I know what the chord structure is, and I can probably tell you what key it was written in, just because of the sounds of the guitars or the sound of the piano or whatever. And I know, so I'll be able, you know, with I can't think of a song to do this with now, but, you know, I'll be able to say, oh yeah, it starts on G and then it does C and then the chorus is in A flat or whatever, you know, because there's just like those intervals and things. Okay, over the years I've honed it as an art, I guess, but it's something that was just so natural to me. It's hard for me to sometimes understand why other musicians don't always get what's going on in music, because it seems so simple to me. So simple as walking. These albums don't take 3 years for nothing. Yeah, we work on every little thing. I mean, shamelessly, really. Sometimes we have fun, but you know, we allow ourselves a lot of freedom in the musical department, because that's what I guess we consider to be the worth of what we do. You know, so once you've written a song, that's one. You know, once you come up with an amazing idea, like once you come up with. A really haunting melody to go over them, then arranging it so that it all works to the best of its ability is the next step, and we take a lot of time and a lot of detail goes on those moments, and then, you know, Dave building up the soundscape and getting the sounds exactly right, because like the drum and bass sound on that song is just superb. You know, the bass just sounds amazing on that song. I mean, I kind of know what he's done. But I mean, I'm one of those people. I've never been happy with the bass sound that I get. Although I've been a bass player for 20 years, I don't really understand how to get good bass sounds, and that's why it's so nice to work with someone like Dave, because he just understands the rudiments of getting the sounds and which sounds to get to make it all work. So then he builds up the picture, and yeah, loads of little things we do. I mean, we discuss at length things like in the second half of that song. Is going to a C, not playing a C. Get on with playing a G minor over. Think you know what the chords are doing, but they're not, and they're just doing something that's a little bit more interesting, and you know, a lot harder. Given the game away now, but you know, would be, you know, kind of like would make you think, oh yeah, I know how to play that. Oh wait a minute, no, it doesn't quite do that, does it? It must do something else. Now, what is it? It does, you know. And I love songs that do that. Old Beatles songs are like that for me. I'd sit down and work out Beatles songs when I was a kid, mainly. I'd be sitting down and I'd be working out these songs, and like songs. You know, and there was always one chord in some of the songs that seemed really simple. There was always one chord that you think, what does it do? Because it doesn't do what I think it's supposed to do. Now, what is it it's doing? It must be playing, you know. And then I'd listen to what the bass is doing, because to understand the rudiments usually of music, if you get the melody and you get the bass line, you kind of understand where it's at. It's a bit of a route map, really, and then working out exactly what is going on top, with be it a string line or a guitar line or just the basic chord or whatever. And with a lot of those Beatles songs, a combination of what the chords are doing and what the harmonies are doing against what the chords are doing, against what the bass line is doing. Because undoubtedly McCartney would be walking around and John Lennon would be playing one chord and George Harrison would be playing a slightly different chord because he's off in his, you know, India land, you know. And then it'd be singing these far out harmonies and stuff, and it's just, you know, I love music that is just got a bit more depth to it, you know, and a bit more going on. What makes a good song is just, it's got to have the sentiment, and it's got to have, the music and the words have to marry in a certain way. They don't necessarily have to be the same. So if Steve's singing about happiness, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be, you know, or if he's singing about, you know, somebody, you know, on the edge of something terrible. It doesn't have to be all dark and dingy, but they have to marry in a certain way, and you have to be able to, you have to get what you're trying to, you know, what moves you about the music has to come across to other people. But first, I guess firstly, it has to move you. Whatever you're writing, and whatever you're writing about has to hit you, and it has to hit you hard, and it has to be something that you'd probably rather not really show out to the public, you know, particularly from a lyrical point of view. You know, I think it's very tough for real artists to keep on sometimes, to keep on going, because how do you do that, and how do you make sure that you're not just going through the motions night after night? You know, that's the tough part, isn't it? You know, because there are kind of two ways of putting on a show, really. You can put on the big rock show and have the moving lights and everybody run to the front and everybody, you know, and gather round for the little song in the middle and all that kind of stuff. And it becomes a bit of a circus. And that's kind of, that only works on a certain level. And it's fine with certain songs as well, but with something like Marble, something that's kind of quite delicate in its nature, it's nice to really get into it and get underneath the, you know, the skin of it.